Good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday Mull for Friday, the 7th of May. Today, according to McShane's reading plan, we're reading Numbers chapter 15 and Psalm 51. And it's an interesting juxtaposition of passages because Numbers 15 talks about various sacrifices that are given. And Moses gives the instructions to the people of when you bring a young ram, you prepare so much grain and some flour and a third of a hin of olive oil and various things to go with it. And ends up in verse 11, each bull or ram, each lamb or young goat is to be prepared in this manner. Do this for each one, for as many as you prepare. And so there's a quite clear regulations around what you offer. And it would apply to everyone. A little later in verse 16, he says, the same laws and regulations will apply both to you and to the foreigner residing among you. So Jews had to keep it, and any foreigner, any God seeker who is wanting to worship God should do it in the same way. And so we have these instructions about sacrifice given to us. But then in Psalm 51, we have David's penitential psalm where he's been his affair with Bathsheba has been revealed, and he realizes that he's sinned against God and against Bathsheba, and he's got it completely wrong, and he comes in penitence before God, and he prays this psalm. But I was struck where he says toward the end in verse 16, you do not delight in sacrifice, or I would bring it. You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings. Even though God had commanded sacrifice, had put the regulations for burnt offerings in place, David recognizes God doesn't delight in that. Instead, he says, verse 17, my sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit. A broken and contrite heart, you, God, will not despise. And he recognizes the sacrifices need to be a reflection of the heart. And while it's easy to look back at what was going on in the Old Testament, we need to recognize how easily that happens today. And so many of us will start things which are good, as were the sacrifices, but they will become a mere ritual. And as I was thinking this through, I thought about this Midday Mull. When I started, it was a focused time of prayer and interceding and waiting on God. And a year ago, it had a very different flavor to what it does now. And I had to stop myself and think, is this just becoming a ritual, something that I do every day because this is what I do? Or is my heart still in it? And that is a real challenge. And when we find that our heart isn't in something, the challenge is not to stop doing it, but to find ways of getting our heart back into it. And now whether that's our Sunday worship, whether that's our morning quiet times, whether that's our midday mulls, whatever it is, we always need to be honest before God and say, God, I want my heart to be in this. I want what I do. I want this sacrifice of praise, a sacrifice of my time, whatever it is I'm doing. I want that to be a reflection of what's going on in my heart. And so as you walk with God, let your heart come to the fore and invest your heart in what you do. And know that, as David says, a broken spirit, a contrite heart, you will not despise. God will accept it. Know that and be encouraged.